parable of the vineyard workers from Matthew 20, verses 1 through 16. Jesus told this story to teach about God. A farmer needed workers for his vineyard where he grew grapes. "Will you work in my vineyard?" he asked some people. "How much will you pay?" they answered. "1 day's pay," the farmer said. "Okay," said the people, and they went off to work. The farmer hired other workers at different times all day long. When they were done, the farmer paid all of the workers the same. The first workers were angry. Look at them. They have puffs of steam coming off their head because they're so angry because they all got 3 coins. This guy looks kind of happy. Maybe he was one of the last ones hired, but he's still getting the same as this guy who worked all day long. So the first workers were angry. "You paid the last workers the same as us," they all shouted. "We worked longer in the hot, hot sun." The farmer answered, "I gave you what I promised you. Are you upset because I am being generous to the others?" Jesus said that God is generous, like the farmer. "The last will be first, and the first will be last with God," he said. And our star point this week, it says practice being generous. Let someone take an extra turn in a game or do an extra chore at home for your mom or dad. Being generous is hard. That's not something that's easy for us to do. But God is generous to all of us. He gives us all these awesome things like forgiveness and love, even though we don't always deserve it. We may not work as hard as others. But God gives us all His love and all His forgiveness. So we can learn to be generous no matter if someone worked a lot or worked a little. We can learn to be generous and see that it's awesome. And God is generous to us, so we can be generous to others. Hey guys, this week in Sunday school, we read the story of the parable of the vineyard workers, where Jesus talked about a farmer who hired vineyard workers all throughout the day, but then at the end of the day, he decided to pay them all the same amount of money. And Jesus shared that the farmer was generous, just like God is generous to us and gives us things like love and forgiveness. God is generous to all of us, like the farmer was generous to all of his workers and gave them all a full day's work of pay. So for our craft this week, we're going to make a clock to help us remember the farmer and how it didn't matter when he hired the person, he gave them all the same amount of money at the end of the day. He was generous to them all, like God is generous to us. So to make our paper clock, you're going to need your plate, some crayons or markers, or both, however you want to decorate it, some scissors to cut out the clock hands, and then the clock hands and the brad from the Ziploc bag. The first thing I want you guys to do is decorate your clock however you want. I chose to decorate mine purple to remember that it's the parable of the vineyard worker. And vineyards grow grapes, and so I really like purple grapes. So I made my clock purple. I drew a little grape below the clock hands. I made the clock hands that green color to show the stem of the grapes or the vine that they grow on. And then I wrote down this verse from our Bible story. It says the first will be last and the last will be first. God is generous to all of us. So even if we're last, God is still with us. We're going to be first in the kingdom of heaven because God is that generous, that awesome and loving and caring for all of us. So what you're going to do is you're going to decorate that plate. Add your numbers for your clock hand. Your clock. Cut your clock hands out and stick that brad in the middle to hold it on so you can move them around. You may need an adult to help you poke that brad through. It's kind of tricky. You may need to use scissors or a pin to poke a hole and then stick the brad in so you can have that clock. But we're making this clock to help us remember the farmer who was generous to his workers no matter when he hired them, if he hired them at noon or at 8 or at 4, it didn't matter. He was generous to them all and gave them all a full day's work of pay, just like God is generous to all of us. So as you're making your clocks, be thinking, how can you be generous this week like God is generous to us? Think about the question from our story. It said, maybe you can be generous by giving up an extra turn in the game or doing an extra chore for mom and dad so they don't have to worry about it. Think of a way you can be generous this week like God is generous for all of us. And remember, he loves you. He's always with us. And I am so excited that he is generous to all of us and loves us. I'll see you guys next week or very soon, hopefully. Love you all. I hope your clocks turn out great.